Great to see all of you. I'm very excited. Paul invited me to present today, and I want to share with you, a concept that I think is emergent, and we are literally in one of those things that I'm going to be talking about. But in a form of an introduction, I have been doing workshops for the past year, maybe year and a half. And I landed on workshops themselves because I have been kind of doing them without knowing that I've been doing them in my design work, in an agency work. Every single time I worked with clients, it kind of happened to be almost like a workshop thing. And then I was like, okay, is this like a separate thing? And as you can see on the images over here, I kind of made a brand for this called Unthink. And wait, don't move. And started organizing workshops like city innovation mapping in Nebraska, where we took like of the city, printed the entire thing, got people together to ask them like how emotionally they think about the city. In Barcelona, on the left side over here, me and my girlfriend, we organized a future of food workshop where we got people like different stakeholders to discuss, what's the future of food like in Europe. And just workshops live are amazing. Like hackathons are a prime example of that. There's energy there. There's like smells and sounds and sights, and you've got this energy of people just brainstorming ideas between each other. There's always some kind of drama. It's just beautiful. It's amazing. But unfortunately, they're quite expensive if you want to organize them, especially if you don't have a space. And you always have to think about bullshit like, how am I going to feed people? How much time is it going to take for people to come there? What time should it be like? Where am I going to organize this? What's the internet going to be like? And then on the other side, when you think about online workshops, on like online events, you have calendars that look like this because people suddenly can have event which lasts like 5 minutes. And then you all probably have either experienced or heard of Zoom fatigue, where you're like sitting in front of this computer for like an entire day and have 5 hours of calls. And I had that, and it literally burned me out because I couldn't distinguish from one call to another. Like I was just keeping notes, but it all kind of mixed and blurred and blended into this one thing. But I mean, it was horrible, but also convenient. I could have had calls and attend so many different things. And now, we have this incredible technology, this headset that I am wearing and probably all of you are wearing too, mixed reality. And those headsets are finally light enough, powerful enough, good enough to have what we are doing right now, which is have a sense of presence in a space that is just, more than just like a flat screen. And I feel like I'm actually somewhere with you, and it's not my living room. It's actually, the Spatial Academy or BagXR or SprintXR, whatever. I think this is the right moment, and it has never been possible before to do that stuff. So for about a month now, I have been promoting this term space event, which, is like Inception, but kind of for real. I have been prototyping events like the Feedback XR, this one too, like Paul has been doing this. And this is example, like here, Paul was presenting his idea of like a game mechanic that was using pass-through, and I was literally seeing it in my own living room. And then over here, there's like a Team XR Spacevents, and all of that stuff is essentially new way to think about how we connect over internet. It's not a live, it's the best of both worlds. It's live, but also remote. And why? I mean, before we go any further, I have to address the elephant in the room, which is how is it any different from, VR chat, Spatial, Engage, Rec Rooms? They have been for quite a while now, and all those people have been, building those worlds, and we talked about that. You have got a lot of like lo-fi, cozy cabins, and you have games, and I have been particularly liking Spatial because that was like my first platform to do any kind of event in. But even there, it was not as easy as it is in Shapes XR. The Rec Room is all about games. Engage is kind of, positioning itself as like this educational platform. VR chat is like for everything and everyone. But even though they offer the same capabilities of like building spaces, in those spaces where people can hang out and exchange information and learn, the framing oftentimes is either lacking, like there's no frame, it's just the rules of the game, you cannot participate or not. What's different about Spacevent is the fact that it's proactively using all those methodologies have been developed, like, you know, canvases, facilitation agendas, you know, all those templates that a lot of smart people have been using to guide groups of people, alignment, to come up with the same solution, to brainstorm problems, ideas. And what I've spotted is that not a lot of people have realized that when you combine a facility like a workshop remotely with a custom architecture, you can amplify the effect to just incredible scale. And you know, this is what we can go after, the, you know, combination of space and event that is possible only in mixed reality, where agenda of the workshop is reflected by the unique architecture design of the space. It was never possible before because it was never as easy as it is right now. We can design spaces that look, you know, they can be circular, and then, you know, we go from this space to this space. It could be, you know, cube-like, where we go around it and then on top of it, and some kind of agenda to it, like we start over here, there's a space over here, like a next step. This has never been possible before. And even if you think about architecture design, these people, for them, this is unheard of, because when you design something for architecture, there's a conceptual phase which lasts a couple months maybe, but then you build it for like years. And now we can build something like a space where people hang out and invite those people like an hour later to that space. And that is mind-blowing to me. You can have spaces like this and literally have people interact in those spaces. But it's not just about spaces. It's about that agenda, because now we can literally tap into something incredibly powerful, the idea of a memory palace. And I don't know, I mean, probably most of you heard of this method of like learning things, how you spatially learn stuff. This has been always like my go-to thing, even though I didn't really knew what I was doing. The base core is, when you want to learn something, you envision a space, or you use existing space, and you encode information, you define a path through this space. So if it's your house, you think about coming through your front door, then going into a kitchen, then up the stairs to your room, and then you just encode information in different elements along this path, like those dots over here. And through that, whenever you have to recall that information, so let's say by the front door, I'm going to remember about certain technique, and by the kitchen, I'm going to think about the other modeling technique for 3D, whatever. I just have to remember the path through the space, not necessarily information, and through that, I will recall that information. So, you know, Spacevents, space events work because we can remember them better. They are like a memory palace. The content of the workshop is stored spatially, and people remember information more effectively, which kind of leads to higher motivation and just energy to implement it. Like, I know what I'm talking about. Like yesterday, we had a John Hanasek talking about robotics and XR, and it was a dense topic. But because he brought the actual robot and he brought actual scans of his house in there, it was a no-brainer. Like, obviously, this is like, you're just showing me. And we were talking about how he's working in Nanum to kind of solve the similar problem when you have different molecules, and then you have all those scientists that have to like explain to each other how the molecules work. This is the same stuff, but on a bigger scale. You were talking spatial cognition. So we literally help to see problems through new perspectives, very, very literally. And this can be applied to kind of any industry if you think about it, right? The experts and innovators who teach and solve complex problems from, you know, navigation, transport, climate change resilience, you know, hospitality, healthcare. all kinds of industries, they do have to do that transfer of knowledge, and it's happening through VR trainings. And this is tapped potential right now, where we design spaces specifically for particular workshops, spaces that are not verbatim. It's not a farm, but it's using the elements of the farm if we want to solve agricultural problems. It's not a warehouse, but it could have elements of the warehouse to it. Like right here, we are in the academy. We're using the atrium element. We're obviously not in the actual university, right? So kind of amplifying that effect. And then, how does this translate into reality? Here are 3 space vents that I've created so far. And most of you are probably familiar with the Feedback XR. Here, the idea of this space and event is we're meeting every week and people introduce themselves. And every week we have, an idea that somebody presents, right? We've got people here, and then we go into that idea. But space itself that we are starting from has been designed to be very modular, to grow over time. There is agenda, and the space is reflected in the agenda. Agenda is reflected in the space. Every single time people log into that space, we start at a new starting point. We have a new experience of the same space, which, if you think about a Zoom call, not even comparable. Would it be possible in real life? I guess it would be, but it would be incredibly expensive to have a space that is re-engineered every Wednesday to facilitate a meeting slightly differently. Then I was doing a hackathon in London, and before that I was like, well, we need to find a team together. So why not do it in XR? And here I designed a space where we met in the center, and every one of those cylinders was representing a different path of a hackathon. So people interested in hobbies would come here, people interested in games would come here, and you would find your people not by just talking to them, hey, I'm Iggy and you're Neville, but okay, I'm interested in this path, you're interested in this path, we're both in XR, let's just, let's jam on an idea together. Similarly, yesterday during the Feedback XR, I introduced this new space, which is, closed space as opposed to Feedback XR, which is an open space vent. This space over here, we start with a problem statement. Then we go into user persona. Then we go into how might we questions. And then we ideate on solutions, all within 45 minutes. This, you can think about it almost like a Miro template, but spatially. There's a very specific agenda. We spend, 5 minutes over here, 3 minutes over here, 5 minutes over here, 10 minutes over here, but it's encoded spatially. We're doing this actually moving from a place to the place with an ease of a remote, but with the effectiveness of live workshops. So yeah, as you can see, this is getting more and more exciting, and the capabilities are growing and growing. But how you can design a space event, and why would you design a space event? And you can think about it as juggling 4 different balls at the same time. One, you have to have a strategical goal in mind. Second, there is some kind of a space design, right? You have to have a capability to come up with a space design. Third one, there is a need for an agenda. You have to know how to go through that space with other people. And then finally, what is the narrative? How are you going to communicate before the event and after the event? And that's been very true to me so far. The sketches over here you see are from the Team XR. I was kind of this has been after the first feedback session. I was just redesigning it. This has been my first iterations of it. But I'm going to give you an example, right? I have 2 spaces that I'm working right now. One which is called Architecture XR, and it's a new architecture school in XR. And here I've been prototyping it internally. We would start with a building that is existing actual building in the center that is surrounded by, first of all, architectural studio, and then construction studio, and then legal and law place. Finally, behind the building, you would have, context of the building, right? So other buildings, a lake that is next to it, a sea, some kind of residential housing. So that would be the concept of the space. The strategical goal initially would be to teach people architecture better. Then the space design is, almost like this kind of X, if you think about it. We've got a building, existing building in a center. There's architectural space where you can learn about blueprints of that building, the architectural practice design process. There's a construction space here where you can learn about capabilities for that given period of time. There, for example, if it's a medieval castle, they only had, construction cranes that were like this, not like that. They had like only small barrels, and etc., etc. But after asking my dad about what would else be necessary for people to learn architecture better, he said a lot of times it's about laws and regulations that people have. You can have right now, let's say in Japan, buildings that have to be, this close to each other, right? Not further away, or there's some kind of a law, or like sun has to visit this building facade for amount of time during the day. So those three elements, they define my agenda, they define my space, and then the context provide, the context. So the agenda would be to invite an architecture studio to, invite them to present the design process, then present construction process, frame the laws and regulations, and do a tour around the space, right? Impossible to do it before. So how would I capture it? How would I tell that story? That is ongoing. I still don't know. I'm still prototyping this, but strategic goal, space design, agenda design, and then narrative. And I think we are all doing this right now. It's just we are adding this new dimension to it. So finally, we, it's like just like broadly speaking from a higher POV, are dealing with impossible problems. Climate change. There's a lot of educational challenges right now. Don't move. Don't move yet. We have to look at them differently. We have to start working on them differently. And I like to say we have to work on them in impossible ways. And Spacevents is, I would say, a prototype, an emerging thing. And I'm very excited that all of you are part of this. Especially excited for Paul to, be a partner in crime. Slightly different approach. But that's it. That's it for my presentation, guys. I hope you got a little bit excited and maybe a little bit inspired. I think we're just scratching the surface. Just final note, I'm seeing there's a little bit of frustration in me. I see a lot of great companies and great people building replicas of existing spaces online, like replicas of universities, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but I think we can go so much further with this. We can take stuff to a completely new level, conceptually, visually, and experientially. So that's it. Iggy Love, and
Woo!
Any questions?
Yeah. Clap, 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 clap. That was me.
It was nice.
Any questions? Anybody got a question? Maybe.
Where's the comment? Go ahead. Whoever else.
Where's the concept where's the concept of memory palace coming from? Some of the illustration looked fairly old. So is it something that's been around for?
Yeah, that was that's an ancient technique, and I was doing very thorough research. I mean, I just Googled this, and Wikipedia told me it was a thing coming from ancient Greek and Roman times. So it's definitely something that has been practiced a lot of time.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. Kind of as part of that, I thought one of the most powerful concepts you shared was sort of like correlating the place in the agenda and the meeting agenda and space, like the sprint steps. I feel like so much of Zoom fatigue is these endless agendas or ambiguous agendas where you don't really know where you are in the topic or whether you've made any progress. And if you just replicated the agenda in series of steps and like, no, we're on step 3 now, I think there's tons of value in that by itself.
Awesome. Yeah, great perspective.
Yeah, it reminds me of how I set up the Spatial Academy space, which is kind of, the beginning stuff at the beginning, like where you start, the 101 classes, and then, 102, 103, and it just kind of keeps going on this learning path, which is, I guess, somewhat similar, but
yeah, exactly.
It's a good pattern.
100%.